Yeah, man, absolutely. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, I mean, what's the point, right?
Yeah, man. Welcome to the Real Estate Investor Fuse Time Freedom Show. This is your host, Carlos Zamora. It is a pleasure to bring on a new friend, David Bokman, to the show today. He is in Philadelphia, and he is a full-time real estate investor and the owner of Philly Home Investor, residential and commercial wholesaling group. The very first time I talked to David was actually last week. He's onboarding onto InvestorFuse 2.0. I noticed he had an awesome Buddha email signature. If anything is worth doing, do it with all your hearts. That was actually the very first topic I discussed with him when I reached out to him. And he's going to deep dive on his background, which includes working in corporate America. One term that I used to describe people is non-corporate, someone that's very calm, cool, collected, and has a great framework on life and abundant mindset. So David has a corporate background, but I would describe him as very non-corporate. And David, thank you for joining us on the show today, man. I really appreciate it.
Carlos, thank you so much. I couldn't have asked for a better intro, so thank you.
That's why they pay me the big bucks, man. Not as much as you, but that's why they pay me the big bucks, man.
I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. But thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to do this, and hopefully some people can get some value out of the things that I can share with everyone.
It is a pleasure and a privilege to have you on. The people who listen to this are in real estate, growing or scaling their business. I already know from talking to you, checking out some of your videos, they are going to have a ton of applicable actions they can take right after listening to this, or even while they're listening to this live. But yeah, let's hear about your background, because I know we talked off air, obviously, about that. But tell me a little bit how you got your start in real estate and professional career, and even your personal background.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I think, if we're going to talk about, me as a person, it only makes sense to go way back.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, but I'm a first generation. My parents came here from Russia. And I'm sure you can relate to this story, or you've heard this story before, where they, immigrants coming here with literally no money in their pocket, trying to build the American dream for their family. And that's the type of life that I grew up as a child. And when you grow up that way, watching your parents struggling to try to support the family and to build, I feel like there's things that rub off on you, And even though they were preaching to me, go to school, get a job, get your education, in my mind, it was all about the hustle. I really wasn't into school, but what I really found myself after watching my parents growing up and building their businesses and struggling is that I was really, really good with sales, and I was really, really good with people. And really at a very early age, I never really wanted anything from my parents. I always wanted my own stuff, and I wanted to buy it with my own money, and I never wanted to ask them. So at a very young age, I had that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I was already kind of working, I could say at 12 years old, 13 years old, full time somewhere, hustling,
Mm-hmm.
selling something, whether it was in school or the newspapers or the grocery store. I was always hustling as a child. And as I got older, that just carried with me. And even though I went to college and everything, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a really, really good student. I would say C minus at best. But during those times, I was working full time, and I was building up my skill set. And at a very young age, at 17 years old, I landed a job at IBM. At 19 years old, I landed a job at Siemens Medicals, and both were inside sales reps. And then I started to get into the corporate world as an outside sales rep. I was a medical device rep for, I would say, over 10 years, covering the entire East Coast. Building sales teams, marketing. Working for Fortune 500 companies is also working for startup companies. So you mentioned earlier in the intro that I was working for some big companies. That is true, but also some unknown companies, startup companies. And I worked that entire corporate world. Even though in the corporate world, you're sort of an entrepreneur, but you're working for somebody.
Yeah, like an entrepreneur, like you're building systems, managing teams, things like that.
Absolutely, you know. And I always thought this was the best approach for me because I saw how much my parents were struggling with their businesses, that I didn't want the same type of stresses that they had. So I went the corporate world, right? But what I ended up finding out was that there's a whole nother set of stresses that come along in the corporate world, such as, you know, like you mentioned, working for somebody else, having a boss. And so I always found myself kind of starting off with a new job with this great high, doing really, really, really well. And then maybe 6 months into it, just like being completely bored, finding myself not really into the position anymore.
Gradually,
Yeah.
kind of a death, kind of like a death by a thousand cuts thing instead of
Yeah, you know, so this roller coaster up and then this crash right away.
Mhm.
And that happened to me for 10 years. And I would either go from the next opportunity or I would get fired. And that was basically my corporate world. But during those times, I was really strengthening my sales and marketing skills. I was getting a lot of training. In early 2010, I had an opportunity to start a online business, which I jumped into. I left the corporate world, thought this was my opportunity to get into the entrepreneur world. I had a few partners. And so what I learned right away was never start a business with a few partners. I had three
Nugget number one: never start
nugget.
a business with
Yeah.
multiple partners.
If anybody has ever started a business with a partner, it already has its challenges, let alone having two more. So we had a total of 4 partners. And the business, just like my corporate world, went straight up and then straight back down. And so without getting into the details and boring everybody, I basically, with my new business failing, I had about $0 to my name. Didn't know what else to do at this point. And so I did the only thing that I knew what to do was to go back to the corporate world. And so that's what I did. You know, I ended up getting another job and convincing myself that I was going to be happy. This is what my fate was. You know, I wasn't supposed to do anything on my own. I needed to work for somebody else. And I was just going to accept it like most people do, right? We have bills to pay. We need to get this job and we need to put our passions on hold. What do you think happened again? You know, went straight up and then straight back down. You know, I got bored, was about to get fired. I knew I was going to get fired because my boss at the time happened to be an old colleague of mine. And so we were really, really friendly. And so I knew I was out the door. And so panic sets in, you know, got to look for another job. Here we go again. Got to go on interviews. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners can relate to this, right? Going from job to job to job. And all of a sudden I get a phone call from my brother-in-law. I pick up the phone and he goes, "Hey, what's your credit score?" and I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, you know, I have a little bit of money and I want to do some fix and flips." And he was doing some at the time already, you know. But he says, "My credit's not that great. And if you partner with me, you know, we'll use your credit and we'll get some hard money and we'll do the flip." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it." And so after maybe about a month or so of looking at properties, nothing ever really worked out. And then, you know, I'm having another conversation with him and then he starts telling me about wholesaling. I didn't know anything about wholesaling. He sends me an ebook. He says, "Look, when you get a chance, read the ebook. We'll go from there." Just like most books or any other book at that time in my life, it just sat in my email bin. Because I really wasn't doing a lot of personal development at that time. I was really just focused on my career and just getting by. Honestly, Carlos, I can't tell you why I opened up that email and read that ebook, because normally I probably would have deleted anything from my brother-in-law, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate with me from that. But I ended up reading this ebook, and the ebook was also written by somebody local. So it also kind of intrigued me a little bit more because it wasn't somebody out in like some other state. It was somebody
closer.
local. It was closer.
Yeah.
And so I read the ebook and I understood everything in it. And I started to like really crave more information. And then like lo and behold, I had other real estate books in my house. Of course, I never read, but I had them. And I started to read those. And right there, something just changed. The quench for knowledge really started to like kick into high gear. And then at that point, I started to go to like real estate meetups to kind of see the kind of people that were doing this or trying to do it, just to get a sense of like, who's doing this? You know, typing in different searches into Google to see people's websites and just to see how people marketing, even doing research on the guy who I read the ebook, checking out his website and doing all that research. And something just right away said, you should just give this a try. So fast forward, I knew I was going to get fired. I probably had about 1 or 2 months until that day was coming. So I put in my mind that I was already going to do this. So I started to quote unquote build the business, build the things that you do for any other business that you would do when you open up. Business cards, website, which I made myself at the time on GoDaddy, create marketing material, create logos, start to buy lists, and start to really kind of prepare myself before I launched. And so to answer your question, I really got involved accidentally, just fell on my lap. So let's fast forward to my first year in wholesaling, which was 2016. I did a total of 8 deals closed and a total real estate volume of just under $900,000. And right there was a win, right? I was able to support myself, pay my bills, live, do whatever I wanted throughout the day. So right there, I knew I had something. Now, year 2, 2017, I closed a total of 43 deals, and we did a total sales volume of $9.2 million. So big difference from year 1 to year 2. We went from 8 deals to 43. And this is 2018. And we will hopefully finish this year close to 60 deals closed and close to $10 million in real estate volume closed, all off market. So from the time I learned about wholesaling to today is a little over 3 years. And I've been able to build a nice little business for myself in a really, really, really short period of time.
That's absolutely amazing, man. On a side note, shout out to your brother-in-law who sent you that ebook. You had the intuition, something from, all your total experiences in life. Somehow your intuition guided you towards opening that one ebook and then taking action, kind of going down a rabbit hole of taking action. And that's awesome that you went that way.
Yeah.
I think that an intriguing thing that first year, first of all, that first year, just for everybody listening, were those 8 deals all wholesale deals, or what type of deals were those exactly? Because you have huge margin on those deals. Like you made a ton of money on those.
Yes.
You pretty much fixed.
Yeah. So to people listening to this, I've been able to not only get into wholesaling, but I've also been able to carve a nice little niche for myself. Not just selling residential properties, but also selling, large development opportunities, commercial properties. People always it's confusing to me because people always ask, can you wholesale this? Can you wholesale that? Yes, you can pretty much wholesale everything, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing. I'm wholesaling everything. And so, the first year was really building my network. Was really building my network and getting myself out there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Using my network to be able to close some of those larger deals have been super, super key for me, for my business.
Absolutely. One thing that I think is interesting, your perspective on a lot of people in this business here, just start taking action. Don't worry about setting up a business email. Don't worry about setting up an LLC, everything like that. But one thing I talk about a lot life in general is kind of choosing the best ends of like two paradoxes. Like life is always kind of like a paradox. You have to choose both ends. So you need to be able to take immediate action. But also I think one thing I want to touch on too is like your perception of building a brand. So like you knew the importance of having websites set up, business cards. That's more of like a long-term play.
Yeah.
So you're able to do that, like the slow approach, and then also take action immediately as well too.
So, going back to the beginning and doing the research that I did before I jumped in, I knew that this was an industry, to be quite honest, like most industries, where people think they're going to get rich quick, or that it's very easy.
Especially this industry, I think.
Especially this industry, and we can talk all day about that, but I'm not. So what I'll say is, coming from my background, just knowing what it takes to build a brand and a business, and then also coming from my background, watching my parents build a business, I just understood the importance of being able to bring that to this industry. I think one of the biggest things that's missing is the professionalism, because a lot of people don't have that background. And so I knew in the beginning that, I can't compete with the guy who's been doing this for 10 years, who's sending out 40,000 mailers. But what I can do is I can compete with him on a professional level. So, and how did I do that? I just, once again, it's simple things. You wouldn't believe how many people don't even have business cards or a website, right? So those were the things that I knew I needed to have from the very, very beginning to separate myself, or at least set myself apart. I think I might be the only person that has a trifold brochure that we leave with people, because you want to have some type of leave behind, right? Something that they can remember you, whether it's you or your acquisition manager that's there. So having all those things set up in the beginning was super important for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just in general focusing on something you can control, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't control if you're sending out, who's going to call you back off a mailer, but what you can control is the process of leaving a trifold with every single appointment you go on, leaving a business card, and then like following up with them a week or something later, whatever your follow-up process may be.
And it's interesting, going back to my second year, where I closed 43 deals, half of those deals are coming from my network, meaning that whether it's an agent or an investor or someone else that I purchased a house from, or sending me referrals or coming to me to unload those properties, which is great for me because those are all free leads. And I've been able to do that just based on the brand and the marketing that I've created just in the short 3 years.
That's super, super important. And that's what our InvestorFuse 80-20 chart, where it's pretty much a chart. I'll have to share it with you if you haven't seen it yet, but it's pretty much a chart that just puts a dollar amount value on tasks that a typical real estate wholesaler would do throughout the day.
I'm trying to be in the $10,000 an hour mark.
Exactly. The 10,000 an hour, exactly what you're talking about. Brand building, networking, that type of stuff, personal development, which I definitely want to pick your brain on the show today as well about. But you had a lot of success doing that. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and like that may be, for lack of a better term, like clickbait or something that may interest viewers in this specific show, but you pretty much 10x your revenue from 1 month or year one to year two, like around 900K to 9 million. So I was going to ask you, what were the biggest levers in 10xing your business? We've already talked about brand building. We can talk about personal development, focusing on things you control, but what else did you do there successfully to 10x your business?
Well, I think the most important thing is having your systems and processes in place, right? And that's things that, and those are all things that I set up from day one. So, I had a CRM on day one. I was doing Google ads on day one, Facebook ads on day one. So, having those systems and processes in place has been a tremendous growth. Now I have a full-time acquisition manager, virtual assistant, a part-time person. So the only way you can get to that point is to have those systems and processes in place, right? Otherwise, there is no growth. I got to the point where I knew that if I wanted to grow, I had to separate myself from doing acquisitions. But I think those are the most important things. And then one of the other things for me, and you'll hear me say this a lot, is grow, slow and steady wins the race. I see a lot of investors, maybe dump a lot of money in initially, which I think is, and not have those systems and processes in place, and they end up wasting or losing, money at that time. I would say for me, the biggest win has been slow and steady. I've increased my marketing budget very, very gradually. If I shared with you what I was spending my first year, versus what I was making, it will blow some people away. But you also touched on personal development. I think that if I wouldn't have started on my personal development story, or let's back that up. Personal development has been a roller coaster ride for me because I've been doing it for so long. But there comes a time in your life where it stops, right? And when I talked about how I wasn't doing it during the corporate world. But at that time, when I got involved in real estate, reading that ebook, going to the next one, that kind of lit the fire for me. And that started more of a personal, got back on fitness, got back to eating right, got back to meditation. And all those things are kind of like it's a spiral effect, right? So I really can't go back and say it was this one thing or that thing, but I can clearly say that once I started reading more, once I started doing fitness more, once I started paying attention to my mindset, the people that I was around, once you start paying attention to that it just becomes an effect that nobody can really stop. And I would contribute all of my success really to that. And really, when anytime I'm in a slump, I can always I haven't been to the gym, or I've been eating bad, or I haven't been meditating. I'm off my game, and that affects everything, right? So I would say that those are the most, that's how I went from 8 deals to 43. I'm not working anymore. I'm working the same amount of hours. I'm working smarter, not harder. And you hear a lot of people say, hustle 24/7, work. Anybody can do that. Anybody can work hard. I'm not trying to outwork somebody. I'm trying to outsmart them. And so for me, that's how I see my business and how I like to work.
100%, man. I'm the same way. I know I'm not the smartest. I'm not the tallest point guard. I'm not the best communicator or anything like that. But when I'm able to stay in a routine and rhythm, take care of my fitness, take care of my mind, everything like that, I'm just giving my best chance. I'm giving myself my best chance of success that day. And then you want to be able to compound that consecutive days, consecutive weeks, consecutive months. And that's where you really see some powerful things happen.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And that goes with the same parallel with you were talking about your marketing starting off. It's like you may not be able to send 40,000 mailers a month in Philly where you're at, but what you can do is you can focus on what you can control and be consistent with it. So you can leave a trifold with every seller. So that's like a principle, a principle right there.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest advice I could give for people is you have to think of marketing as it's a long-term play. If you think that you're going to just do something for a month to 3 months, I would tell you just don't even bother. If that's in your mind. It has to be a 6-month play, a 1-year play, whatever it is. You just have to have that mindset is that it's not going to happen overnight. And I knew that getting into it, that it wasn't going to happen overnight. And if you have that type of mentality, you can make clearer decisions versus I have a bill I need to pay in 30 days. I don't know which decision to make, right? So I would say, it's easier when you don't have a bill to pay in 30 days. But I would say you have to have that mentality that you're building something and it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
Yeah. I was going to say, I enjoyed your content, some of that you had on YouTube talking about that, like kind of having the framework of seeing everything as a long-term play in regards to your marketing. But it's right, like out of the thousands of decisions you have to make a day internally with your team, negotiating with sellers, buyers, deciding whether you're going to go to a networking event versus working on the business at home, whatever like that. When you have that framework, you're giving yourself a better position to make those decisions from. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Making a decision out of desperation is, I've done it and I can say from experience, it doesn't work out that great.
Yeah, man. Never want to come off desperate. Tell me a little bit tactical what you have going on now and kind of year two as far as the marketing you're doing. You mentioned you're not sending out a ton of mailers, or at least you weren't starting off. Tell me a little bit about like the whole process or the whole operation, you know, as much as you're willing to share with the audience as far as like lead gen, marketing, your acquisitions pipeline, and how you're selling these deals. Because you're a unique case. Most people are wholesaling single family houses for an average deal of anywhere from like 5 to 30 grand, a wide range there. But you're doing these deals. I'm not a numbers guy, but it sounds like first year, if you're doing 8 deals, 900 grand, it's six figure deal average. So what's something, you know, anything you're willing to share of how you're being able to get those deals and what your kind of entire process and operation looks like?
You know, so here's what I'll say from a tactical standpoint. I am not doing anything different than any other podcast or guru. You know, I'm following the ebook, right? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this business is, you know, there is no secrets. There are no secrets. All the information is really out there. It's just the actionable steps.
Yeah.
You know, so like from a tactical standpoint, I will say this. I am all in for online. And what I mean by that is, you know, I have 3 or 4 websites, multiple blogs. You mentioned the YouTube, the social media, the Google ads, Facebook ads. I am of the mindset that I would rather wake up in the morning and have incoming leads from people who have contacted us, plus anyone who is fighting the internet or thinking that Facebook ads don't work or Google ads don't work. I mean, you know, that's just old mindset, right? So we're in a whole new world. Industries are changing. And so I may not be getting the lead quantity that the guys who are mailing are, but I am for the long haul strategy, right? So I'm gonna do the SEO. I'm gonna do the PPC, which I already do and I have been doing. Facebook ads, Google ads. So I'm all in for that. From a marketing strategy, I also know that you can't be all in on just one, right? So you have to spread your wings. And so I do mailers. We do, you know, leave things in locations. I do have agents that bring me deals. So basically my marketing is everywhere, you know, newspapers. You ever see those Val packs that you get in the mail? There's like 50 coupons in there.
Yeah.
I'll do that. So I will do everything. There's a few things I won't do, like bandit signs and things like that. I don't think that they work. I just don't do them for my company. I don't think it's a good representation of the way I want to show off, you know, or promote my company. So we don't do things like that. So I don't want to discourage anybody from that, but I'm sure people will ask because that's a big topic. Mm-hmm. So I don't do that, but I do everything else. Everything under the sun. But my technical strategy is to be online and to be the leader in my marketplace, you know, on page 1 for everything.
Very cool. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I love how you said you're just somewhat keeping it simple, that you're not doing anything secret necessarily. We are 100% in the age of like super connectivity where there's so much information. I could like go on my phone right now and look up a wholesaling ebook while I'm talking to you right now. Another interesting point too that I talk, like that's a huge discussion that I talk with people pretty much every day about, owners and operators about, is direct mail versus online. Direct mail, like bandit signs, it's going to work. I think the demographic of people is getting smaller to a certain extent of people that like check their, like older sellers potentially that check their mail. But I think no matter what, it's going to work. But online definitely seems to fit more with your mindset that I've heard so far the past week that we've been talking about. More of like a monk-like mentality, patient, something scalable, something that you can see from a high level, manipulate, get really clear-cut analytics on, see what's working, see what's not working. Yeah. So I like that. That's kind of your main horse in the race, so to say, but you still got some other things running.
Yeah. And then, you know, as far as like those large development deals, you know, if I can be honest, those are not coming from my marketing. You know, those are being brought to me the same type of marketing. So here's another hot topic that people are always talking about is the buyer's list. How do you grow your buyer's list, right? Well, to me, it's simple. You do the exact same thing to grow your buyer's list that you would do for any other business, right? So I've been doing that organically over the last 3 years as well. And I'm pretty confident that I probably have one of the largest buyer's lists in my market with a few thousand. And anybody can have a large list. My list gets anywhere from 50 to 60% open rate. And if you know anything about the real estate market, I think most agents get about a 12% open rate on their emails. So the fact that I'm getting a 40, 50, 60% open rate is huge for me. And so I've been able to leverage that. And so people know about that through one person, through another person, through another person. And so I've been able to get a lot of people bringing me these large off-market deals, like a 33 unit that we just closed for $3.5 million, or selling an entire block for $2 million. The block's already zoned and approved to build 18 townhouses. So, I'm doing these types of deals all off-market, all just through my buyer's list. And that's another strategy of mine. Is to continue to leverage that so that I can continue to get more of these larger type off-market deals.
You are really honing in on that 10,000 an hour type tasks. And like you said, and that's what it is. And with me too, with anybody who's really in a job that's cares about their job or entrepreneurship or anything like that, it's you're not just working, just lining up work and doing it. It's also a battle of picking what is the highest value tasks that you can knock out and starting with those and doing those consistently. Yeah. So those deals, I would love to hear anything that you're willing to share on those. I think those people are going to hear the numbers are sexy, but I'm sure you're going to say something along the same lines that was just simple. You did the due diligence on the property. You knew it could be valued a lot more. And then you were able to find buyers from your long-term brand building and, refer or network that you've been building up the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could sit here and say I'm doing something magical, Carlos, honestly, but I'm not, I'm getting opportunities and I'm taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
A lot. Go ahead.
I was going to say the magical thing is it's a little bit mix of everything. It's the mindset that you have, just that you have the corporate America background, but you also have the mindfulness and the long-term approach. And I think everybody kind of has their own unique genius. Not everybody's going to have a 10 plus year sales background like David and, have the same growing up experience where he saw his parents working, first generation guy, but everybody has their own strength, whether childhood or early on in career, that they can apply to this business. And I think part of it is, if it's part of the magical thing is that you just found that out and have harnessed it and have locked in on personal development as well as learning the real estate wholesaling industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I will say, just to backtrack a little bit, before I had the acquisition manager, before I had the VA, which I just hired, and before I had the part-time, I was doing everything myself. So I would say to people listening to this, A, make sure before you farm something out that you know how to do it yourself. And B, make sure you bring people on board when they're actually needed. Because you hear a lot of people talk about you got to have all these systems and processes in place, and you need people. But what comes first, right? Do you bring on people before you even have leads? Well, I don't know. So I would say for me, it got to a point where I knew if I wanted to grow, I had to bring on these people. And I was very reluctant to take myself away, because who else is going to be better at acquisitions than me? And so, having that mindset, but it all goes back to, like I said earlier, slow and steady wins the race, right? So don't try to do it all, but understand it all, right?
Absolutely.
But just to let everyone know that's listening, I was doing everything on my own, built the website, calling the leads, going out to the properties until I was able to get to the point where I needed to bring on some extra help as well. And it couldn't have come at a better time in my life as well, because I was expecting my first child at that time as well. So it was almost, and the person that I brought on board was a friend of mine who had just sold his business, and he was kind of like a lost soul, not sure what he was going to do, So it was kind of perfect timing of everything.
Like the ebook finding you, just perfect timing.
Dude, it was, what else can I say? Fate, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, and some other content I watched of yours, I think you were saying starting off, you were managing like your online marketing type stuff just to learn it a little bit before handing it off to somebody else. And I think that's something important too. I've talked about on this show, a good exercise to do. This is more so for businesses that already have multiple people, not the solo. I guess they can be solo operators out there. Is kind of like creating a list of an exhaustive task list, Dan calls it. Just writing every single task that goes on in your business and seeing like what you're best at, what can be delegated. And that just gives you a ton of clarity on your business, hiring, and when you should hire.
Yeah. I used to be one of those people that thought I knew everything. You're never wrong. I don't need somebody for that. I got it. Well, that person's gone. I'm smart enough to know what I'm not good at. And so, if you're going to take this business serious and you do want to grow, stick to the things that you're good at and then get people to do the things that you're not good at. Mm-hmm. And for me, Facebook ads and Google ads, like, yeah, I understand it, but can I do it? Am I maximizing, what I'm putting into it? No. Right. And so when you get to the point where you can pay somebody, which is where I got to, then absolutely know that is not my skill set. It's time to farm that out to somebody else.
Absolutely. Great nugget there. As far as moving forward, or I guess one thing I want to touch on too, it's like people listening to this, they're going to see the title, super successful guy. We've been talking about mindset, all important personal development stuff. Tell me a few maybe like failures or learning experiences. I guess they're one and the same that you've had on just pretty much being able to do, millions in revenue. And you haven't even you're relatively like new in this industry.
Yeah, I'm really totally, I consider myself new and still learning. Just fortunate. Honestly, once again, I'm not doing anything magical, but I'm doing the right things and I'm doing it every day. I do have some core values on our website, and I don't know, I can't recite all 6 of them, but a lot of them have to do with being honest and your integrity. And I think there's plenty of times that we're not always the highest offer when we bid on a property, but we'll get it because they believe and trust us at the end of the day. So, integrity is a huge thing. But lessons, I can think of one right off the bat. It was my very first year, one of my first large commercial properties that I'm trying to sell. This is like an over $1 million deal. So going back at that point, I ended up losing the deal. But at that point, I was only focused on residential properties, and I didn't know what to do with this property. And so I just kind of farmed it out to my real estate friend and let him kind of deal with it. I knew we had a buyer for it, but there were some issues going back and forth. And I really kind of just separated myself from the deal and just let him deal with it because I thought he was the professional, being a real estate agent. Long story short, I did lose the deal, but what I learned from that whole experience was A, I didn't need him. And B, if I would have done the due diligence myself, I probably would have ended up saving the deal and selling it. And that's okay. I lost that deal. But what happened after that is what really changed my career. That's where I started to get more opportunities like that. And normally what I would have done is I would have sought out help from other real estate professionals. But what I realized is just because somebody's been doing something for a few years doesn't make them a professional. And it doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. And so if you take the time and the research, which is what I did, I was able to sell those properties. And so I ended up losing that one, which was 1.5 or 1.6 million, but I ended up closing all the ones after. And so that was a huge lesson for me, was realizing that I can't farm that out to somebody else and just forget about it. I can do it myself. And if you are gonna farm it out, you can't remove yourself either. You really need to still be in the situation and still be involved in the deal. So that was it was a good learning experience for me, for sure. And I think it propelled me even more to know that I could do this on my own, knowing that the professionals that I sought out to help me failed, if that kind of makes sense.
It 100% does. And it seems kind of like if it's a fine line, like you and I would say the majority of owners, they kind of get queasy at the thought of delegating things that they're good at, or, even stuff they're not good at. It's hard to delegate. But then you also, once you do delegate it, you still want to be able to manage and kind of see what's going on. So I think that's a challenge in general overall as well for owning and operating a business, building your own company.
Yeah. But I'm glad that happened. And now I've pretty much become one of the leaders in my market for those types of deals. So lose one, but gain so much more.
Yep. Absolutely. Clearly a leader in your market. Tell me a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like now, as far as like what you do every day in the business. I know we've talked off air on this. This might include like a keto coffee in the morning after fasting, but we're both on the same wavelength there. But you have this massive operation. I say massive in comparison to like most of the people that are listening. I guess in any sense, you have a wildly successful business, but you with this big corporate background, building up these systems, building up these processes. What does like a typical day in the office look for you up there?
Yeah. So, to be quite honest with you, I'm not working all day long, right? Because the whole point of being in this business is to be able to live the type of life you want to live, right? And so, I spend my mornings. So I have a newborn, so she'll be 10 months old. So
congrats, man.
Thank you. So my mornings have shifted a little bit, whereas before the child, it was all about, breathing and meditations. Now it's about spending some time with the baby in the morning before I go off to the gym. But right now specifically, I'm in a growth stage. So we've moved into this new office. I have a full-time acquisition manager, and we're looking to hire for early 2019. So right now specifically, majority of what I do is really just continue on the marketing and branding. I really try to separate myself from sales and acquisitions. But I am going through, the pipeline. We're heading towards the end of the year. I have 12 deals on the board right now that are scheduled to close between now and the end of the year. So I'm just managing that, right, to make sure that everything's scheduled for closing, all the documents are in place. We have a few properties we're still looking to sell, but most of my time is really still spent on marketing and building the business. Because we're hiring for next year, I'm looking at ways of creating a job description and responsibilities and how that's going to look moving. So that's some of the time that I'm spending on right now. But honestly, I'm not in the office more than like 2-3 hours a day.
Love that.
Right? We're in here, we get our jobs done. My acquisition manager is generally, out and about looking at properties. I'll go to the gym. I'll spend more time with the family, some more personal development, whether it's some reading or some meditation. But that's generally what my day looks like. Spending more time on the business than usual, because once again, we're in growth mode. And so I want to see how I can streamline things. I'm not as big as you keep saying, this big, massive operation. The numbers are big, yes. But there are definitely other people I compete with that have larger teams and extravagant offices and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely under the radar when it comes to that point. But I'm strategically thinking, how can I build the business? How can I do things differently than everybody else? What am I missing? What's going through the pipeline? What can we fix? What can we make easier? And that's the majority of what my day looks like from a tactical standpoint.
Well, I would say you do have a big operation as far as mindset and time freedom and overall quality of life as the baseline of it. So I appreciate that. One thing I wanted to share too is, I know we just met like last week on our email for getting set up with onboarding. I had heard from Dan that you were doing these numbers, and the question that you had for me, you're like, hey, I'm always trying to learn what's tips and tricks from other successful investors. So I thought that was interesting because I try to be the same way. I always
Yeah.
tell people I'll be learning till the day I die. Like I have books right here next to me, pitch anything. I'm always going to be studying like psychology, how the brain works, business, stuff like that. Pretty much till the day I die. I just love it. And
Yeah.
it makes you happy and you're like most optimized. So that was one thing I appreciate too. I heard you were doing these numbers and you're trying to ask me what successful investment. So I was like, this seems like a pretty cool cat here.
You hit it on the nail, man. You stop, the day you die is the day you stop learning. And it's a shame, it's a shame, you read these books and you see these statistics that, people haven't read a book since the day they graduated high school or college. And it's a shame, really. You look at what's going on in the world today and it's a lack of education. Everything from the food we're eating to entitlement issues and to whatever it is, medical issues. I came from the medical world. It bogs my mind how many people don't ask more questions from their doctor.
Yeah.
They just take, whatever he says and say, okay, I'll take that pill, and it's crazy that this is the kind of world that we're in, right? We don't ask enough questions, and it's mind-boggling to me for sure. Speechless, actually. Speechless, actually.
We're obviously on the same page on that. Is that part of your deep driven why or motivation, you think, to be able to reach some level of financial freedom, to be able to help more people across the country be more aware and conscious of these type of things?
I don't necessarily think you need to be financially better off to be able to do that, right? I think it just starts with doing the right things. And obviously you can do a lot more when you're financial, when you have that backing. But yeah, man, I absolutely, it breaks my heart to see friends of mine who, I'm talking to them and they hate their lives, right? They hate the job that they're in. They can't spend enough time with their families, and all of these things are fixable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's a shame that and I haven't really thought about this as much until recently after having a kid. You start to think about things, like what kind of life are we leaving for them?
Mm-hmm.
And so you think more about these things, the type of society that we live in, and how we're raising children this day, get a job to get an education, or education to get a job. But that whole system is changing, right? Now we have all these people graduating college and not being able to find jobs. You have student loan debt taking over credit card debt. So there's so many issues. And yeah, I've been thinking a lot more about that recently. How can people wake up, and realize that they can live the life that they want to live? Mm-hmm. I mean, I can recall a conversation that I had with somebody who's older than me. I'm 39. They're older than me, when I was just getting involved in real estate. And the thing they said to me when they found out that I was going to do this was, isn't it a little bit too late? And it's crazy how that can stop people right in their tracks, right? And I think that happens every single day to people. They get stopped in their tracks by somebody else telling them that it's going to be hard or it's not going to be possible. And I think that, if my story does anything, I didn't know anything about this. I didn't do anything magical. I didn't do anything crazy tactical, anything out of the box. I'm sharing with as much as I can. I just stick to the script, right? I just follow the script and just did the right things every single day. And that will pay off. That will pay off. I can't tell you how I started getting these $1 million deals. They just started coming to me, right? And so I was able to take advantage of it. And I was just prepared, right? Right time, right place, taking all the right steps. So that would be my advice to anybody listening to this.
Yeah, man, absolutely love that. And that, societal conditioning, it's powerful and it's dangerous like that. Like someone saying, I guess, quick math here. If you started 3 years ago, you're around mid-30s. Someone saying, aren't you too old for that? That's crazy. And I'm 28 and I still experience that. I have been experiencing that. I would definitely say I'm in the minority of my friend network, people around my age, mid to late 20s, that actually really, really loves their job. And it's kind of sad to see. It really is. People get stuck in the rat race, corporate America. I kind of I was kind of like InvestorFuse Dan. I worked with him right after I graduated college, so I kind of never really jumped into the rat race to avoid it. But it's crazy, and it is sad just kind of how either how you grow up, things get planted in your mind and your head that kind of control your values, your patterns, your beliefs, your behaviors, everything like that. But then also what society pushes on you, like growing up in school, elementary school, and now you're going to start thinking about that, but that stuff is powerful, and I think it's important to find a mentor or some sort of source of information or positivity on whatever you want to accomplish in life, and building up that social proof, seeing other people do it. Like people are going to listen to this and be able to get social proof of like, oh man, I can close, be successful. It doesn't have to necessarily be the numbers that you're doing, or, you're real humble about that. But yeah, man, that's super important. I think that's one of the themes that we've hit on today, as far as just having success in your business and just overall quality of life.
Yeah, man, absolutely. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, I mean, what's the point, right?
Yeah, man.
And so, I'm able to, I can't tell you if this is what I'm passionate about. I can't say I'm passionate about wholesaling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's my calling. But what I can say is that it's enabled me to utilize my skill set in a way that allows me to live the life that I want. And it's bringing in other opportunities. I didn't talk about some of the flips that I have going on and some of the other projects that I'm involved in, but none of those would have been possible if it wasn't for, just all the initial stuff that happened prior.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But, I will tell you that I'm way more happier now than I was when I was making six figures in my corporate job, with the expense report and the travels and all that other stuff that you're made up to believe that you're supposed to have when you're growing up. I hated everything about it. And for some people, they may love it and want that, but for me, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. So this has been amazing. And thank my brother-in-law again. Yeah, right.
Shout out to David's brother-in-law. Please listen to this.
Yeah,
but
man.
Yeah, man, that's how I try to see it too. I know I should see it like that. I'm trying to build it more into my mindset as well. This is just like a vehicle to do whatever I want. Like even hosting this show is one of my main roles here for like content, marketing, providing value to the audience, stuff like that. And I love it because I get to just talk to successful people. I think you're more along the same lines as me, where I'm really into personal development and stuff like that. But it's awesome. And like last week, I know that you spoke at like a Drexel Business School. You're able to tell your story, inspire a lot of people there. And who knows what type of inspiration you're going to give that number of people and what they're going to be able to do with that.
That was actually really, really humbling for me because it was a real estate finance class. And I'll be honest, man, I didn't even know they had those kind of classes. And it was a friend of mine who teaches that class. And I was humbled for two reasons. One, everything, I looked at the syllabus. I wouldn't be able to explain one thing. So those kids are obviously way smarter than me. And the other speaker that night was a very successful person who's been in the real estate world for a really, really long time, who owns a brokerage as well as a management company. And so, and we've actually done a deal together. So having him on that same night and just being there was super, super humbling. And then obviously being asked to be on this. And I think I even have another podcast tomorrow that I'm doing. So it's been humbling to be able to do all of these, for sure.
Very well deserved. And I can tell you people are going to get a ton of value. And like I said, build that social proof, which may be the most important thing.
Yeah. I hope if anybody gets anything out of this, it's take a step. Don't wait until tomorrow. Do it now. If you know this is something you want to do it. Put the processes in place. Don't be the perpetual student. Start making actionable steps. Without it, nothing can be possible.
Love it. Last question, then I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy speaking engagements, podcasts these days. And I want to, when we're going to talk InvestorFuse setup, obviously, but I definitely I'm going to keep friendly bugging you to put more content out on YouTube because I love the stuff that you've going on there so far.
But, that was a good reminder to me. Good reminder to me.
Love it. Last question is kind of my curiosity. Your parents seem to have had a big impact on you growing up, first generation from Russia, kind of seeing their work habits. As we talked, that was kind of ingrained into your into your mind, how you viewed life, viewed work, everything like that. With this business and other businesses you may take on in the future, how do you want to leave that type of impact on your 10-month-old daughter and any future kids that you have? Do you think about that every day? And if so, what type of impact do you want to leave for them?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I can always remember, like going back when I was a kid and just being in my dad's store, you don't know anything at those times, right? But my dad's selling things, and people would always come in and they would just like talk with him, but they wouldn't buy anything. And I couldn't understand. I'm like, Dad, why aren't they buying anything? And he would be like, no, you don't understand. They're not just clients, they're friends. And so that will always stick with me. One of those things that I can always look back on and say, yeah, now I understand why I conduct business this way. And so if there's one thing that, I want to do, me personally and my business, and want to be known for, and have my daughter look at me and known for, is having that integrity, knowing that you always did the right things. When I don't want to stay too long in the story, but when my parents first came here, my dad was an engineer in Russia. And when you come to this country, your degree doesn't transfer. So he wanted to go to school and get his degree. But we had family at the time that gave him wrong advice and said, no, don't go to school, go to the factory and go work. Now, those people who told him to go do that, they're all well off now because they did maybe some shadier practices throughout life to get to where they are. But my parents always struggled, but they always did the right thing. And they were always known for that, as being really, really good-hearted people. Not just personally, but the way they conducted business as well. So I think if anything, that's definitely rubbed off on me as well. And it's something that I would want to leave behind as a legacy, or what I'm known for sure.
I absolutely love that, man. And I think that's very apparent. Like I could tell before I even talked to you, I kind of picked those vibes up that I mentioned earlier in the episode from the email signature, and that you were this successful and like looking to help other people and also learn from the best. So
yeah,
couldn't agree with that philosophy more and love it anymore. Definitely appreciate the way you choose to live your life. Definitely someone I'll look up here and excited to see your journey grow here. I know we have some Q1 goals, getting acquisitions in place and get you up on InvestorFuse. So be genuinely excited to do that. Hopefully hit a Sixers game here. Was just at a Knicks game this weekend. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, I don't know if you want people reaching out to you directly, but maybe you can give some type of, obviously not your direct sell, but some type of contact, or maybe even your investor care site to check out.
So, obviously I own a few different businesses, but if anybody wants to get a hold of me personally and learn more about me and my businesses, you can go to BokmanInvestmentGroup.com. That has just a little bio on me, the companies that I own, and at the very bottom has my personal email address. So that will go to me. I will see it. And I will get back to you if it's of urgency and importance. I will certainly get back to anybody. But yeah, that's how you can get to learn a little bit about me and my contact info. Awesome, man. A pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much. I'm going to say thank you so much on behalf of the listeners too. Everybody checking this out is going to get a ton of value, and we'll chat soon. Carlos, thanks so much, man. Have a great day, and we will talk again soon. Likewise, David.